Good afternoon, good afternoon, and gentlemen. It is nice to be here. Welcome to Puck Around and Find Out, the live stream where we talk about everything hockey. For those of you who are in the chat, go ahead and drop a hi to my dog Oki. He is sleeping right now, finally being a good boy, but he is very excited to talk about what is going on in the world of hockey and the NHL. And specifically, I want to start off by talking about the Buffalo Sabres and the drama that has popped up over the last couple of days regarding defenseman Rasmus Dahlin. Now, I discussed this in a short video yesterday, but there was a report by Paul Bissonnette on the Spit and Checklist podcast that he was asking General Manager Kevin Adams to potentially trade him if the Buffalo Sabres did not improve quickly in the next year or so. He was reportedly unhappy with the state of the Buffalo Sabres and their position in the NHL, which is kind of understandable because if you look at the standings right now, the Buffalo Sabres are currently in dead last in the Eastern Conference, 56 points in 64 games, a 4.38 point percentage. They're among the worst teams in the NHL, and they have been for the last few years, unfortunately. So Paul Bissonnette comes on Spit and Chicklets and says that from what he had heard, and this is, he's couching it by saying, this is just the things that he's heard, that Dahlin had requested a trade out of Buffalo, or had said that he would request a trade out of Buffalo if the Sabres don't improve. Now, after that, just a day later, Dahlin comes out and he refutes report. He says that he wants to be in Buffalo. He did just sign an 8-year extension to be with the Sabres, and he made a public statement that said, I've never said I want to be out of here. I'm not happy with where we're at. I don't want to lose. We have to get better. But I never said I wanted to leave. So he's very emphatic in this regard as to whether or not. So he's very emphatic as to him wanting to stay in Buffalo and be a Sabre. But Paul Bissonnette came back but Paul Bissonnette does stand on what he heard. He's not trying to be a reporter. But I think whether or not Rasmus Dahlin requested out of Buffalo, it's a very interesting situation as far as how it's been handled. As you can see, NHL.com has this story on their website. The Buffalo Sabres came out yesterday and retweeted his quote about him wanting to stay here. If this was something that was kind of just a rumor or, Paul Bissonnette stirring up shit, I don't know why the NHL and the Buffalo Sabres organization would really give it the time of day. I've seen this in the NHL and in other pro sports where, things are coming out about, X player rumored to be traded. X player might want a trade out of a certain situation. And usually what happens is that player, their agent, whoever, just goes to, like a beat reporter or somebody like that and says, hey, that never happened, or, I want to be here. It's usually not the team itself going out and saying, see, look, he wants to be here. He said it. He wants to be here. It comes off as a little bit desperate by the Buffalo Sabres, as though they are a little insecure about the state of their team. And they should be, quite honestly. As I mentioned, they are the worst team in the Eastern Conference. They have not made the playoffs since 2010, which is the second longest drought in professional sports in North America, behind only the New York Jets of the NFL. And they're not making the playoffs again this year. And quite frankly, they don't really have a great path forward. They're going to have another top pick, but they've had top picks for the last 5-10 years, and it hasn't ever really worked out. Obviously, they continue to trade away their good young players, like they did with Dylan Cousins, like they did with Casey Middlestat last year. They were rumored to be trading away Bowen Byram, a good young defenseman. And it feels like it's just an endless cycle for Buffalo of constantly, getting young players, they develop into good players, and then they get traded away. And I think that if this is true, if this report is true by Bissonnette, which I think it could be not just because of, I blindly believe Biz, but because the NHL and the Sabres are coming out so strongly to support, Rasmus Dahlin's claim that he doesn't want to be there. I think that even if it's not true, I think that this should be a warning shot to the Buffalo Sabres. This is a team that has been so bad for so long. They need to get off of their asses and make a big boy move this summer. And probably it's more than one. It's probably just like two big boy moves to really make themselves a competitive team next year. And I was thinking about it, about what the Buffalo Sabres should do in this offseason. And they're going, in my opinion, to have to make a few very big swings. The biggest swing that they can make, and the one that's probably going to be thrown around the most, is for them to go out and get Mitch Marner, who's going to be a free agent at the end of this year. They have cap space. They can offer him a massive contract. Yes, they have, guys like Dahlin and Owen Power and Tage Thompson also signed to big contracts. But, the rest of their, young forwards haven't really gotten paid. Guys like Zach Benson. They have some other young players, like their goaltenders aren't making that much money. They could potentially be in a situation where they could pay a guy like Mitch Marner big money in the offseason. However, I think there are a few teams that are going to be in the position to sign Mitch Marner along with Buffalo Sabres. Not just like very competitive teams, like maybe the Winnipeg Jets or maybe the Detroit Red Wings or something like that. But I think, bad teams that are also looking to get off the schneid. Like I think the Blackhawks are a team that should be very aggressively kicking the tires on Mitch Marner. Maybe the Canadiens should be looking to see if Mitch Marner could be available and would want to come to them. There's going to be competition for Mitch Marner. He's probably going to be the best player available in the market and free agency this offseason. So Buffalo's not just going to be able to throw money at him. And he might not even want to go there, unfortunately, because Buffalo's been so bad for so long. Mitch Marner might not want to be tied to them long term. So there are a few other opportunities that I think the Sabres could go, specifically to add a forward, because I think that their defensive core is pretty well set. With Dahlin, with Power, with Byram, they've got three very good defensemen. I think they need another really good forward to go along with Tage Thompson. And there are a few names that I came up with, and these are going to be very, very big swings, because I think that's what the Sabres need to do this year. And the first person that I'm going to throw out there, and people are going to freak out when I suggest this, but the Sabres should try and go out and trade for David Pastrnak. I know Boston probably would never trade him. But if you're the Sabres, you can make a Godfather offer for a guy on a team that is generously not going in a direction where they're going to be competitive very soon. Boston might want to keep him as a player to build around. He's still an elite level player. But on the other hand, Boston sold at the deadline. Their prospect pool is not very good. If they are seriously committed to a rebuild, I think that this could be an avenue the Sabres would want to go. Now, it would also be a bit of a tough one for the Sabres to get the Bruins to trade him in division. But I think that is the sort of move that the Sabres need to be thinking about. That level of move, excuse me. Another guy that they should go after, who is a little bit on the older side, but is somebody that maybe could be available, is Anze Kopitar. Again, LA probably does not want to trade their captain, does not want to let him go, and he might not want to go to Buffalo. But older guy, won some cups, got a lot of experience, really good two-way player, still very, very effective. That could be a guy who changes your culture. You need a culture changer in Buffalo is kind of my point. Guys who are used to winning, guys who know how to win, how to get to the playoffs, and can help those younger guys, because younger guys just have not learned how to win. Nazem Kadri from Calgary could be another one. A little bit on the lower tier in terms of skill, in my opinion, but a guy who's won a cup in Colorado could potentially be available. Steven Stamkos, a guy that I think they should have gone after in the offseason last year. Nashville, obviously, is kind of a dumpster fire right now. So they could be looking to move him and potentially get a little something in return. Another predator that you could be looking at is Jonathan Marchessault. Another guy won a cup, very effective top six forward, would be a good complement to go with Tage Thompson. I think that would be another really good option for them. I think that that's sort of the area they need to be looking at, in my opinion, looking for players who have playoff experience, leadership, and are accustomed to winning and can kind of instill that belief into the locker room. Because right now, their best players just don't know how to win in the NHL. Dahlin, Power, Thompson, Peterka, these guys have not won in the NHL. They have not made the playoffs in the NHL. And the concern and the reason why I say that the Sabres need to be very aggressive this offseason in particular is because if you get accustomed to losing, that becomes a habit. And that becomes a habit that's hard to break. It doesn't matter if you bring in Lindy Ruff as your head coach, if you bring in some, other good young players. If you don't learn how to win, it just becomes that much harder to succeed. So that's my piece on the Buffalo Sabres. Go out this offseason and make a big move. If you have to trade away a first round pick, don't be afraid that it's going to turn out to be like a top 5 pick next year. You need to be in the mindset of we are making the playoffs, or we are going to be very, very close to making the playoffs this next year because you've got good young pieces. And yes, I think you could also upgrade your goaltending if you're Buffalo. Obviously, Levi has not worked out so far. UPL has been middling, to say the least. I would go out and see if you could find somebody who's a little bit more stable in the offseason. So that's the Sabres and the Rasmus Dahlin drama. Now let's move on and talk about the New Jersey Devils, who pretty beat up right now. As you can see on the injured reserve, the Devils had Jack Hughes, who went out, I think it was last week or the week before. He is out long term. They announced today that both Jonas Siegenthaler and Dougie Hamilton are out essentially for the remainder of the year. So their defensive core right now looks like this. You got Luke Hughes, Brett Pesce as your top pairing, Dumoulin and Kovacevic second pairing, and then Brendan Dillman and Nemec on your third pairing. This is, in my opinion, not terrible. I've seen some people going out there and saying, the Devils are cooked. They don't have any chance in the playoffs. I don't think that they can win. I disagree with that. I think that they're definitely not the threat that we would have considered them to be 2 weeks ago with Hughes and all those guys in. But this defensive core is not terrible. It's pretty solid. I mean, you have Brendan Dillon as a third pairing guy. Dumoulin's a fine second pairing player. I think that the problem is that your top pairing is just not going to match up to, Carolina, Washington, Columbus, or anybody who's, a serious contender in the Eastern Conference to, make the playoffs and go deep. But your defense is not bad, in my opinion, for the New Jersey Devils. And when you look at your forward core, even without Jack Hughes, it's not terrible. It's not a terrible situation. It's still a decent top line. The second line is a little bit suspect, in my opinion. I think you're pretty weak down the center after Hischier. Dawson Mercer's fine, but I wouldn't consider him to be a very good third line center. But you have some very good depth scoring, is my point. You've got Paul Cotter, Andre Palat, Tomas Tatar, Mercer, Bastian, all in your bottom six. Those are guys who can play third line on most teams. And then in your top six, you have Hischier still. Meyer, Haula, and Bratt are 3 pretty good wingers, 3 legit top 6 wingers. You're not in a terrible position. And then you also, in goal, have an actual competent goalie this year. You have Jacob Markstrom, who I really like and who has been playing very well. Not an elite goalie, but a very good one. He's probably a top 15 goalie, but not a top 6 goalie. This is a team I think that's good enough to win a round of the playoffs. And I think is good enough still to get into the playoffs, even without Jack Hughes, even without Dougie Hamilton, even without Jonas Siegenthaler. They're still a good team. They still are a dangerous team in the right circumstances. And so while it is unfortunate that they've been hit with this injury bug, I don't think it's the end of the road for them. I think that they still have some opportunities if they make the playoffs to go deep. So Devils, they got hurt pretty bad by those injuries, but I think that there's still a chance. You're telling me there's a chance, so to speak. Um, so I'll be interested to see if the Devils, when they get into the playoffs, because I think they're still going to make it. They think they just have too much talent to not make it. What they're going to do once they get there. Um, and I wouldn't be betting on them to win the Stanley Cup, and I wouldn't even be betting them, if they make it in as the third Metropolitan seed, which they are now, to beat Carolina. But could they? Could they beat Carolina if they get lucky? Carolina's goaltending is a little suspect. New Jersey probably has the edge there. I think there's a chance. Not a great chance, but there's a chance still. Okay, so that is the New Jersey Devils. Let's move on now and talk about Lane Hudson, who is honestly, like, it is insane to me that when you look at the rookie odds, the odds for the Calder Trophy this year, I'm going to pull these up really quick. This is per Sportsbook Review. Odds right now to win the Calder Trophy, Celebrini is the leader at minus 189. To me, this is a two-person race, and it's between the two people at 3 and 4, Lane Hudson and Dustin Wolf. Celebrini has been very good. I want to make that very clear. I really like him. I think he's going to be a star in this league. Bichkov's also been very good. Celebrini was hurt. Bichkov had that period where he went ice cold. To me, Lane Hudson's maybe the most impressive rookie defenseman I've seen since Cale Makar. And the thing I showed earlier, the fourth rookie defenseman to reach 50 points in his rookie season since Nick Lidstrom. And look at the other three names: Seider, Makar, Hughes. 3 elite defensemen right there. And Hughes is right there in that conversation. It is just kind of crazy how good Lane Hudson's been this year. Like, he was like all these other 3 guys you see here, Celebrini and Wolf, I guess, and Michkov. Celebrini and Michkov were expected to be here. Wolf is a surprise, but Hudson is a massive surprise. This is a guy that most people were not thinking about before the year as being a realistic chance to win the Calder Trophy. To me, if I was laying money down, I would put it on Hudson. He's been just so good this year. And the value that he's added to the Canadiens just cannot be overstated. So I just wanted to shout out Lane Hudson. He's just been incredible to watch this year. And as a Caps fan who is watching his brother Cole play for BC or BU this year, I really hope that when Cole comes here, he can be 80% as good as Lane has been this year. Because Lane, I think, is like a year or 2 away from being among the elite defensemen in the NHL. So see, I talk good about the Canadiens whenever they have a good player. Okay, and then the last thing wanted to touch on really quick is with regards to the game last night between the Canucks and the Flames. This was an absolute bloodbath. Obviously, you had this injury where Kadri went after Marcus Pettersson with an egregiously bad hit, in my opinion. Not new for Kadri, unfortunately. He has done this sort of thing in the past, and it's the sort of thing you really don't want to see in the NHL anymore. But then he, got it back from really surprising Elias Pettersson. Kadri goes here, boom, nice hit by Pettersson. You'd like to see that from one of your leaders. And just honestly, it was such a good game last night. I was watching this game. Vancouver won in overtime. It's so interesting to see these two teams who I think don't get enough shine in Western Canada because they're so overshadowed by Edmonton. Really show just how much they dislike each other, because there was like a very real visceral hatred from these two teams. And so, yeah, Zary going after Pettersson. Other Pedersen going after Kadri. Bad blood between these two teams. You do love to see it. All right. I'm going to keep this short and let everybody go. But thank you, those of you who watched. If you're watching afterwards, drop a hi Oki in the chat so I know that you saw the little doggy. And I'm going to be back tomorrow doing, again, these short little 20-minute streams. Hope you'll join me, and I'll talk to you soon.